My name is Sanjay Madhav, and I'm an associate professor of practice at USC and also a video game programmer. I'm honored to share the stage this afternoon with everyone. Before I start, please remember to silence your phones and fill out your session evaluations after the talk. You'll get an email with a link. We've set aside a good amount of time for Q&A at the end, so please save any questions until then. Breaking into the game industry has always been challenging, but the onset of the COVID pandemic has caused some seismic changes, and today we're going to focus on some key areas on how to start your career today. Things are especially tough right now with the economic landscape, with all the layoffs that are happening and everything. But don't lose hope. While there isn't a magical sword we can give you to vanquish the job search boss, our hope is that our collective wisdom will get you well on your way. So what's changed? Sorry, the GDC folks insist we have to put at least one meme into our talks. So we're going to focus on two areas today, mainly. How has getting noticed changed? How do you network? How do you build a strong portfolio website? What about the hiring and interview process? What should you expect? What are some ways to prepare yourself? And how do you succeed in finding the job that will be perfect for you? So one common question is, how do you get noticed? You want to be the penguin that stands out. The first thing is to network so that you'll get to know people and learn about job opportunities that come up. I'll turn it over to Adinda, who's going to talk about her experiences networking online, specifically on LinkedIn and Discord.
Hello everyone, I'm Adinda, I'm a teacher and a freelance game journalist, and I'm gonna to be really honest right now, because I despise networking. But being anti-networking is basically my superpower. I really know how it works very, very well. You guess what? This was my profile picture or profile in 2020. And I received a scholarship to go to attend GDC in 2020. And I was literally going with this profile to GDC. I'm not kidding. At that time, LinkedIn did not matter to me. So just a little bit about me. I was working in Hong Kong as a game design. I teach my game design course in Hong Kong, and suddenly I was jobless. I didn't have a LinkedIn profile. I hated networking. So, oh geez, I moved back home to Europe, and I tried to make my freelance business work with Facebook. Well, don't do that. I need a functional LinkedIn profile because I was tired of this. You know, when you go back to your parents. So at this moment, I just receive every now and then, every day, I receive an interesting, high potential job offer on either LinkedIn or on Discord, interesting Discord groups. So who updated her LinkedIn profile? Moi. So before I'm going to give you all the best tricks, because you're waiting for that, we are going to look back at the in-person conference. And what do you notice? In 2020, 2021, no one attended in person. Well, guess why? And later on, 10,000 people were gone. So where did the people go? Well, they went back to, you know, LinkedIn and Discord. This usage has been increased immensely. So you really need to adapt if you really want to stand out. That's what I'm going to explain. So your profile is really important. You need a very good background. You need to have a good headliner. You need to show that you are interesting, have the recruiter being interested in you. And if you have not yet done it now, right now, have this hashtag banner on your LinkedIn profile, because recruiters will really recognize that you want a job. Okay, second thing, it's not about you. It's literally my ability to create a strong network was directly related to my ability to show empathy, curiosity, and reconnect. Other thing, everyone is cool. You know, everyone in this room. So after this talk, really don't run to the toilet. Please come and have a conversation with the person next to you. And quality matters over quantity. For example, the developers of Please Touch the Artwork liked my LinkedIn post about my interview, and I just sent him a message, and now we just have an interview together. Another developer, I read an article about him. I thought he had a cool insights. I messaged him, and now we are friends on LinkedIn. It's super easy. Just let them know that you're genuinely interested in people and they want to connect with you. Anyone. So just do it. Just also do it with recruiters. So this is my homework to you. Go to LinkedIn, find your favorite company, find a recruiter, find that you have something in common, and send a message, not with, I want a job, but with really a genuine question or genuine connection, right? Because the quality of your connection is what influences your online reach. Because the algorithm of LinkedIn is terrible, and it's the most unforgiving of all the other places. If you have 500 contacts, then LinkedIn takes you serious, but otherwise, it's not. So basically, you don't want to be washed out of the LinkedIn. So share resources with other people, reconnect, and other stuff. I'm going to continue also with Discord because Discord is really useful. I love the conference Discord groups. It's hard to get in, but if you're once in it, there are a lot of professionals and they share a lot of different resources. So what I really want to highlight is the Women in Games Discord groups. They have weekly discussions and you connect really easily because everyone is really nice. Another one which I would advise as well is the Indie Developer Stammtisch. We have a monthly carousel networking event on Discord. So another thing with Discord, what's really important, it's casual, it's spontaneous, really easy to reach. You should use the reply feature because it's you scroll all the way down. You need to identify yourself and you can use it with a lot of resources. I'm continuing to give the talk back to Sanjay.
All right, thanks, Adinda. So networking certainly is important to learn about what job opportunities are out there. But as you start putting together materials for applications, one key part of that is a strong portfolio website. Now you might ask, do I really need a portfolio website? Yes, you do. In the past, the advice for some disciplines like programming was that maybe you don't need one. However, in today's job market, a portfolio is critical to stand out. It gives you one spot to show your best work. Okay, so you need a portfolio. What should you put on it? Find example portfolios for your discipline. Critique them. What seems to work well? What do you think needs work? Now, since there's lots of information out there about artist portfolios and even the artist portfolio review that's happening right now, I'll instead show you a designer and a programmer portfolio that I like. First up, here's an example of a game designer portfolio by David Shaver. While he has a lot of examples of his more recent professional projects, he also has examples of his older personal projects. I like how for each of these projects, there's a lot of detail about what tools were used, what was worked on, and so on. There's screenshots, videos, and even a download for a playable build. But what I really like is how the site shows the thought process behind the design decisions. There are a lot of diagrams of different parts of the game design, schematics of the levels, and so on. It makes you understand how thorough and comprehensive the design process was, which will impress any prospective employer. Showing the process, not just the outcomes, is an important part of any portfolio. How about for programming? Here's an example of a programmer portfolio by Hugo Peters. I like how the homepage has quick summaries of each different project, including specific details of the contributions. It's important that you also clearly articulate what your contributions were on group projects. Looking at the project pages, there are a lot of details and visuals about the features. There even are code snippets included in here. While you don't necessarily need to go this in-depth for your portfolio, I do like the idea of showing small code snippets rather than just saying, here's the full source code for my game, which realistically most people aren't going to go through. Okay, so those are some examples. Thanks to both David and Hugo for letting me share. So as you start working on your portfolio, here are some rules to keep in mind. First, have a clear narrative of what you are good at. For instance, on David's site, the focus is on designing, building, and scripting levels. All the top build projects illustrate this. As another example, if you're an aspiring graphics programmer, I want to see your graphics projects. The board game you designed might be fun, but it doesn't speak to your graphics abilities. Remember, you don't have to include every project. Exclude projects that make your narrative unfocused. In a similar vein, make sure your most impressive work goes first. For example, on Hugo's site, the first projects listed are the largest ones. And don't just throw in all of your work. Pick the 3 to 6 things you're most proud of and focus on that. Having a lot of poor projects will hurt your portfolio. You also want to make your site easy to navigate. Don't require lots of scrolling and clicking to be able to see your work. Every click makes it take longer to look at your work. David's site is a good example of this. From the main page, you can quickly see the projects and in one click get more information about them. And to reiterate this point, you should show the process. Making big games is a long journey, and having insight into your process is invaluable. Both David and Hugo's sites did a good job of this. And also remember, for larger projects, be very clear about what parts you worked on if you were in a large group. Finally, I want to see screenshots of your games at a minimum. Videos are good too, but playable versions are best. Both of these portfolios use videos and animations quite a bit. And just make sure that you test your load times, because if you have a lot of them, it may make your site take longer to load. All right, so we saw some examples and learned about some rules to follow, but how do you actually build the website itself? And the first question is, well, where should you host? There are a lot of paid options. I'm not going to list them, but you can find them. But for free hosting, I suggest you use GitHub Pages. Now, one problem with GitHub Pages is that if you have no prior web experience, it can be a little daunting to get set up. But I have good news. I've solved that problem for you. I made a template that's easy to use for a GitHub Pages portfolio. It has a home page with a grid showing your work. Then each project has its own separate page. It's quick to navigate with only one click from the main page to a specific project. It's easy to change out all the images, projects, and include however much detail you want on each project page. I even made a sample one that I'm not showing here because it has some copyright information in it. So where do you get it? Go here on GitHub. The QR code takes you to the same place. The template does not require any knowledge of web development or coding. There are included detailed instructions that you can follow to set up your site, and a discussion forum if you have any issues. Now, if you weren't able to scan the QR code right now, don't worry, it'll be up again later during the Q&A. All right, so you have a strong portfolio and learned about exciting job opportunities through your networking. The next challenge you'll face is navigating the hiring process. First up, Lynette Fernandez is going to talk about how she survived 32 interviews in less than 3 months and lives to tell the story.
Hi, I'm Lynette Fernandez. I'm a professor at Bradley University. I teach game design and programming. I'm very happy with my job. I absolutely love it. But it took a lot for me to get here. In 2021, I got laid off and I interviewed with 32 companies in the span of 2.5 months. It was at least 32 initial interviews, and several of them had successive interviews as well. Interviewing from home is no easy task. In all honesty, I hated it. I hated interviewing. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 27% of job seekers get a job after submitting about 10 applications. It's a numbers game. I played it. I'm going to share with you some key points from my experience, things that you'll experience as you go along too. Most of my interviews went really well, but there was no job offer. Why? I have no idea most of the time. I would ask, I would communicate, I would never get any feedback. How can I improve? I have no idea. I personally am a big fan of communication. It should work both ways. Some interviews were just awful, and I'll share why. First of all, I hated when the interviewer side was not prepared, and this happens. Repeating interview questions from previous interviews. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know what position I was interviewing for. These things happen. Some were just a very bad experience. It was based on how I was treated during the interview. I'm a triple minority. I'm a female, person of color, and an immigrant. One of these things probably affected my interview and upset the interviewer. Some failed at proper communication. Incorrect dates, times, famously ghosting you no matter how many times you actually communicate with them. Incorrect topics about what the interview was about. Nobody likes being ghosted. What did I do? I moved on. I was upset, but I picked myself up and concentrated on the next interview. I'm gonna share a couple of interviewing tips that helped me when I was interviewing and hopefully might help any of you. First and foremost, your workspace setup. You should have a good space where you can actually interview from. You wanna make sure your background was clear. When I was interviewing, I had a gorgeous brick background because I had a loft in Seattle, and that proved to be very distracting, and it was a big topic of conversation. I changed that to a single panel curtain so we can talk about the conversation at hand. Next, don't forget that you also want to make sure that your laptop's plugged in. Whatever device you're using actually does not fail in the middle of your interview. You want to make sure that your camera works. With your camera, make sure your lighting is correct, that you're not washed out or doom and gloom on the other side. You want to make sure your microphone also works. You want to make sure all of these work together. Prep this way before your interview. Don't play the can you hear me, can you see me now game in your interview. You don't want that. Couple of things to note. Have a glass of water ready. Dry mouth, coughing very often happens. Make sure you have space for water. Make sure you put your pets away. Make sure you actually keep chores not running in the background. Keep your space free of distractions. It's very important. Time management, know your routines. So you know your routines, you know your kids' routines, you know your pets' routines. Make sure that you keep away from busy times. If you know your kids come home at 4 o'clock, maybe try not to schedule. Don't try to push yourself too much. It's not all possible. Try as hard as you can. Don't schedule back-to-back interviews. Interviews have a chance to go over. Allow that buffer time. On top of that, take breaks. Take breaks to step away, take breaks to recharge, and then come back to mentally prepare for your next interview. Let's not forget about physical presentation. So how you look matters. You have got to present yourself well. Most likely you'll be on video. That's exactly what's gonna happen. So dressing up helps you put yourself in a better mood. Oops. And also puts you in a professional mindset. This will really help. If you feel frumpy and dress frumpy, it will show through. You don't want that. Lastly, make sure you have materials in front of you. You should be able to have a list of questions that you want to ask. This is a two-way street. You want to make sure that you have a pen and paper to take notes. This shows that you care, that you're listening. And something that helped me was I put Post-its on the side of my screen. I have a tendency of talking really quickly when I get excited about something. So I actually put talk slower on mine, and it really helped because I can concentrate better. They can hear me better. Something that I do now that I already have a job is put a Post-it note that says, "You are not hungry." Because, it helps. These Post-it notes help. So take advantage of the fact that you got screen space. So I survived 32 interviews. Don't be afraid to go out in the world, give it your all, and get the job that you deserve. I'm going to pass this now over to Luke, who's going to talk to you about handling feedback.
Well, thank you, Lynette. So as you can see in my title, I'm a systems and content designer, which basically means that I get paid to think, ideate, and write. As you might imagine, feedback is roughly maybe 90% of my day-to-day, so I thought I might throw my hat into the ring on the conversation. So I first want to acknowledge the fact that feedback can feel quite scary at times. I know I'm not the only one in this room who has worked tirelessly on an idea, spent countless hours coming up with the perfect design, the perfect system, the perfect mechanic to just make the best game ever. You send it off, and boom, what feels like a total gut punch of a comment comes in, and it just knocks the wind right out of your sails. Well, it's something that is bound to happen at one point or another, and it's something we want to make sure we're ready to deal with because it's inevitable, and it can be quite overwhelming. The example I have above is a document of a design spec I worked on for a personal project a few years back. It was the basic game design document for a game jam I worked on with some friends, and as you can see with the comments, it just got utterly torn to shreds. But fear not, I'm here to equip you with the formula needed to conquer your toughest of feedback in a simple and effective manner through the feedback response formula. Yeah! So this is a formula you can use in situations where whether you agree, disagree, or anything in between. So let's break it down step by step. First, whether we agree or disagree, we want to acknowledge and reiterate the feedback. Next, we want to clarify our proposed solution to address the feedback. And finally, we want to go about considering the implications of our changes. So in the above, I was given the feedback to add a mechanic to possibly help increase the difficulty of the game. And while it was a good thought, I didn't personally think it would help enhance the gameplay as much, so I ended up pushing back. I made sure I was confident in my decision, so I kindly and politely ended up pushing back. So let's dissect how I answered by using the feedback formula. Now, first, I went about acknowledging the idea. Again, it's important to let the viewer know that they've been heard and that you might have even gone about thinking about this. Again, we want to ensure that, it's not a last minute thing. You didn't just put it together, throw it together without putting all the thought that really needs to go into it. We then move on to explaining how we came about our solution. And I clearly laid out why I didn't think the change was necessary. The other designer recommended adding a mechanic, but I responded by saying that I felt the level design could suffice for difficulty. And finally, we want to empathize with the feedback. We don't want to be rude or outright dismissive of somebody's comments. At the very least, if we have to, we want to do so in a polite manner. So I made sure to let the commenter know that if my solution wasn't feeling adequate enough, we could for sure come back and try this option. So let's take a look into a more professional point of view. When I got to my second round of interviews, it was over 4 hours long, and close to my third hour, I met with my lead designer, hi Russ, for my design test. I was asked to pick a game that could be played with a deck of 52 cards and explain the rules. So I decided on the game War because I knew it would be quick and easy to do, and this was a great idea. I was prompted to explain how I'd improve upon the game therein. So I ended up proposing a betting mechanic, and this would have players bet money to kind of increase the level of risk and reward. But my interviewer brought up the concern that, well, what if players don't have change or feel comfortable betting? Good point. So let's see how I applied the feedback formula in my response. So first, I ended up acknowledging the concerns voiced in the feedback. In this instance, we were even agreeing with the points being made. So after the acknowledgement, we went about explaining our new solution, and what if the players just bet the cards in their deck? And finally, we went about considering the impact of our proposed change, and this would make the entire situation be self-contained. So wrapping it all up, let's go through the journey that we went through. So first of all, we realized that we were scared, as feedback can be quite scary inherently, and you're not alone if you feel that way. But by using the feedback formula that we learned, you're able to now gain confidence in how you respond to feedback through 2 real-world examples we went through. So I'd like to turn it over to an amazing man and someone I'm proud to call my friend, Dennis.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dennis Gillum. I currently work as a product manager at Electronic Arts in content moderation in a positive play group. But in my previous career, I was an aerospace engineer. And I want to give you guys all advice on career change and how to go about it and how to find your dream job, not just any job in the game industry. Oops. The way I found my dream job was by using the Ikigai philosophy. I learned about Ikigai through a friend. His name is David Lovejoy. We took classes together through a class called Product School, and he taught me about this philosophy. This philosophy is all about finding your reason for being. Your reason for being is combining what you love with a job that you can be paid for, with a job that the world needs, with a job that you're actually good at. But how do you go about combining these three? Well, with this method, I'm going to show you how I was able to find the center with this approach. But first, you must understand that job hunting is a job within itself, and you must have the time and the money to be able to take on this endeavor. But this room is packed wall to wall. It wasn't easy for you guys to be sitting here in this spot, so I know that you all are capable of doing it. First, what you can be paid for. You want to limit your scope to the jobs that you research to 5 to 7 companies. You're going to be doing a lot of research, and you want to be, in these interviews, you want to be distinguished. You want to look as like you are a professional. You want to sound like you're a professional. It's going to take a lot of time and effort for you to get your interviewing skills to the point where it seems like you've been doing this type of job for years. This right here is the Ikigai worksheet. Feel free to take a picture if you want. The template will be available at the end of the slides. Using this worksheet, I looked at the jobs I was interested in, and I compared it with the job that I had back in 2021, which was in aerospace. And I wanted to rate how I felt about that job versus the jobs that I was going to take into the future. Ikigai, as I said before, is combining your personal interests, your knowledge in that subject matter, what you can be paid for, if the world needs it or not, and combining all that score all into one. First of all, your passions matter. Your personal interests matter, and you should put that first. For me, I was interested in game development. I'm very much interested in creating games, but I'm also very driven into making the world a better place. And so the job that I choose to focus on, that I have a 10 right here in this spreadsheet, is content moderation, the job that I currently have now. You want to evaluate your skills based on the jobs that you are listing in your worksheet. I had been on several interviews prior to discovering Ikigai, and each and every single time I kept being rejected, and I had to look inward within myself to see where I needed to improve. So the books that I use as a product manager to understand games more is Games as a Service by Oscar Clarke, Decode and Conquer, Answering Product Management Questions by Louis C. Lin. For all of you, it's up to you to determine what research methods you need, what books you need to dive deep into to get better at your discipline. I want you to bet on your future. I want you to do the research of the job that you're choosing and understand the compensation packages, understand the benefits that come with it, and talk to friends. You're here at GDC. Talk to people who are in the jobs that you want and understand if that compensation package, if that's something that works for you. And if it's not, then choose something that you feel like you can be paid equitably for. And learn about your audience. You can learn about your audience through current events or by actually using the product and see if this is something that actually the world needs. What the world needs is not just measured by how much money it makes, but does it actually improve the world? Does it actually make people happy? For me, that was something that was a core metric, and that's also why I chose to dive deep into content moderation. But I want you all to also ask yourself that question: is a job that I'm choosing to go for, will that make the world a better place? Press Reset was a book that I used, a book by Jason Schreier. I had burnt out from aerospace, and I didn't want to burn out again. So I did research on this book to understand what was going on in the game development process that was causing people to burn out. So that way, when I'm in that position, I can do better for my coworkers so that we can all create great products while also being happy internally. And at the end of that, you're going to calculate your score, and that is your reason for being. for me, I was very, very happy that the job that I was personally interested in had a higher score than my previous job, or else I'd have been very disappointed. So at the end of the day, what are you willing to risk in order to get the job that you want? For me, I'm a single male, no spouse, and so I had plenty of time and not a lot to sacrifice in order to undertake this endeavor. But I had someone, a CA named Adam Smith, he asked me that he has 2 kids, he has a wife, and he's in school. And so like, what advice did I have for him? And I told him that he has to set aside that time. He has to understand what are the things he's not willing to risk in order to obtain his dream job. And it might take him much longer than I am, but we'll both be in that promised land. So I used a habit tracker to determine what were my priorities. My priorities was meditation, making sure that I was mentally healthy. I received a therapist, and every 2 weeks, we would talk about my journey. He and I would talk about my burnout and the things I was doing to stay mentally sane. I needed to exercise in order to stay physically healthy. I needed to make sure that I wasn't eating out so much, so I had the money to come out to conventions like this. And I would track every single day to see if I had a good day and bad day, and understand what was making me feel happy and continue to do those things, what was making me feel sad and try to do those things less. In conclusion, it was only just last March, where I was unemployed and I was sitting in these seats just like you. And I was here networking, trying to understand better what it is I wanted to be, the impact that I wanted to have on the world, and who I needed to talk to get into that place. It was only June 15th, 2021, where I was completely burnt out and I was willing to do anything in order to be happy and to get the job that I wanted and to have that impact. And it was only June 22nd, 2022, not too long ago, that EA was able to hire me into the position that I wanted. But prior to that, if you see this chart over here, all those red dots, I was having terrible days. I would get rejected from jobs, and it would be so hard to be resilient because every job I interviewed for, I truly wanted. And it hurt to feel like I wasn't good enough. But interview after interview, I started to look inward in myself and understand what is it that I needed to get better in order to get the job that I wanted. And through this method, I continued to train until I became the professional that I knew that I was. And June 22nd, I was able to get that job. So you definitely do not need to burn out to have the motivation that I had in order to go through this method. And here's Natalie to tell you about how to avoid burnout.
All right, this needs to go down first. I'm way too short for this. So, as Dennis just said, you can be fire and flame for your future job, but you need to try to not burn out. So one thing first about me. I'm Natalie, and I have anxiety and depression. Why am I telling you this? Well, I'm still standing here, and I kind of hope that some of you can get inspiration from this. And I also want you to pay attention to your mental health when you're already on your job journey, to see whether a company fits you the same way you fit the company, just to make sure that you're not going down the wrong path. So mental health in numbers. First thing is that take this as an industry nonprofit that's working on decreasing stigma and increasing support, there we go, for mental health in games, and also released a paper that's called The State of the Industry. So the numbers are taken from there. For once, the industry is incredibly lateral change friendly, but we also lose a lot of people to other fields. Only a third of developers remain in the industry for 10 years and more. The other thing is that the average numbers of employee is in a 5-year period is 2.2. This kind of job instability is related to increased stress, work anxiety, and depression, which is exactly what we don't want. And more than half of us admit that crunch is an expected part of their jobs. Now, for those that have not heard the term before, crunch is compulsory overtime during the development of a game and often uncompensated. The symptoms of crunching are related to burnout, on the other hand, and are identified by emotional exhaustion, reduced personal accomplishment, and feelings of hopelessness. So, the impact on your job search there. You might be thinking, that's all fine and information, Nat, but what am I doing with this? This is kind of not encouraging, if not the opposite. Well, I'm telling you this because I personally chose to ignore that. I took the first job I could get in marketing, and I burned out in the trial period because neither me nor my employer saw it going anywhere. And I'm still recuperating from that. Again, sometimes it's not worth it to take that job. So if you take one thing away from this talk, let it be the notion that mental health is a valuable, scarce resource, and you should treat it like one. Now, the other thing is that you shouldn't let the job shortage, in quotations for a reason, scare you. My company was just at a big convention trying to compete with other employees for like new people to hire. And like, we are looking for people. The jobs are there. And don't let it scare you. And also, the other thing is that, like Dennis mentioned, not the only jobs in games are not just programming and art. And I want you to remember that. You can find something that suits your needs and like find something that will make you happy. However, I do understand being scared, like feeling like you can't afford it, to be picky in a financial sense, but also in terms of inexperience. But you just need to believe in you. You can do this, and there's more than enough people willing to take you. And even if you accept to go to a place that does crunch, you should make a conscious decision about the trade-offs you're willing to take and can prepare yourself mentally in order to make it have less an impact on you. The other thing is that you should take some time to hone your craft and value your hobby projects. Why am I saying this? Because I started as a programmer, but I got hired for my experience in Twitch streaming. It's not as a content creator even, it's just through the skills that I collected, like social media marketing, community management, video editing, minor graphic design, you say it. Not only would I've never thought that some of these things are actually useful, I also think that they allow me to do something that I love every day at my job, which, you guessed it, kind of benefits my mental health. So now, the typical questions you're given to see whether you fit somewhere or whether something fits you are those self-evaluation questions. What kind of environment do you work well in? What kind of team do you need? Where do you want to go? Where is your job path going trajectory-wise? However, when I wrote that slide, someone told me that I really appreciate dearly that those things can take 10 years to learn and you probably don't have the time. So let me give you a shortcut until you intrinsically know the answer to those questions. The awesome pseudoscientific results of personality tests. And yes, I'm serious. Not the BuzzFeed kind, I think I need to point that out, but they can give you a list of your strengths and weaknesses when you can't come up with them yourself. So you can start your self-evaluation from a solid baseline and improve upon that instead of starting from scratch. And some more sweet insider knowledge. The one that's on the screen right now is one that I took because it was part of the interviewing process for my company. We actually use it to see how someone like feels and whether we have the kind of personality needs that this person would give us. It's a paid test, it's called Insights, but there's comparable ones called 16 Personalities that will give you similar information. And another thing that they told me is that a typical startup makes the mistake of like only hiring people that are exactly the same like them. But any good company will make sure to hire someone from every corner to make sure they're balanced. So you don't need to be worried if the result scares you. Basically, everyone is needed somewhere. All right. The other thing is that I also talked to Lynette about is the fact that you can evaluate the company. If you can't like evaluate yourself now because that's too hard, you can just change the question around. And the best way to do that is when they ask you this infamous question, do you have any questions for us? I would not believe how many people say no to this, which not only leaves a bad impression because it shows you're not interested, but you're also wasting a very valuable opportunity. So instead, you can ask, what does a successful person at your company look like? Because that allows you to prepare. And even if this interview goes wrong, you can still use that knowledge for the next one. And because we don't have time to give you an entire list, there's a link, take a picture. I'm going to end on that slide for a reason, with a good reverse interview. So everything that you can ask a company to figure out whether they suit you. Now, on that note, do you have any question for us?
All right, thanks. So we'll take questions now. There's 2 mics you can line up. I guess you're first on the left.
All right. Hi, I'm Josh Temple. I'm a current senior at the games program at UC Santa Cruz. Earlier when you were talking about designing a good portfolio website, you talked about a great narrative. For me personally, I'm a bit of a programmer, a bit of a designer mixed together. How would you maybe suggest going about crafting a narrative? Because like some of my projects are just like a board game that's like pure design that all did. But then some of my other projects are like, oh, I just did the programming for this.
Okay, so the question is basically, I'm both a programmer and a designer. What should my narrative be? I have some design-focused things, some program-focused things. So actually, on that note, so the David Shaver site I mentioned, David is actually both a programmer and a designer. He does a lot of scripting as well as level design. So that would be like a good one to look at. But in general, like, so the one way you can sort of think about it is look at sort of job postings that are interesting to you and think about, can you craft your portfolio to match that job posting? So if you're both a programmer and designer, the first thing I would think is like, do you think of yourself more as a technical designer or as a gameplay programmer? Find portfolios for either of those roles and look at job postings for either of those roles, whichever one you're most interested in, like craft your narrative around that.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
All right, so we'll do the next one on the right.
Hello. I'm wondering if putting the results of that personality test on our resume is a good idea.
So the question is, should we put the results of the personality test on our resume?
Well, I'm going to take that one. No. It's one of those things where it's a nice hack to get to know yourself. And if you can figure something out that you can put on the resume instead, that would make way more sense than just the numbers. Because we all know those numbers are not the most accurate thing in the world. But if you see a strength in there, in the list, that actually suits you, describes you, why not put that on there instead?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, don't put down that you're an INFP or whatever. Right? I'm an INFP actually, but all right, left side.
Hi, I'm Akash. I'm a current senior. So I have two questions. First, I'm in college. 4 years technically, felt like 2. Do job people acknowledge that it's been 2 years for every senior that's here? Because we did have COVID, and it feels like our college experience is a little bit shorter than what is normally the case. And sometimes in interviews I've done, it's felt like they don't really feel like this is the case. They're like, why haven't you done more? Nah, I don't know. The whole world's shut down for 2 years. So
I guess the question is, do companies
how do you navigate around COVID?
So how do you
especially as a
navigate
student?
the fact that, I guess, as a student during COVID, you may not have as impressive portfolios and such as prior?
Yeah.
Luke, do you have something to say on that?
So I graduated college in 2021. So I kind of empathize with you. I kind of get that situation. I think that you'd be surprised how understanding people would be in that situation. Like when I was applying to jobs, it was obvious, like we were just coming out of the pandemic or even still kind of in it, situation. So people understood where you were coming from. And while yes, it's difficult, I think being able to spin it in a way of I did what I could. Mm-hmm. And if there's a way to show that you went over above and beyond in that situation, it'll look even better.
Yep. And then my second question is, I noticed a lot of y'all were product managers or production or something, and that's something I want to go into. But I've always been curious what you recommend production portfolios look like, because we do more soft skill stuff, or at least in my opinion, like Trello task lists or organizing meetings and stuff like that.
All right. So the second question is, what should a production or product manager portfolio look like? Dennis, do you have ideas?
So in my previous experience, I came out of a highly technical role. I had a lot of trouble convincing game developers that I was capable of taking my experience from aerospace to game development. Mm-hmm. So I took what I knew from product management and aerospace and created projects that applied to game development. So in my portfolio, I have 2 games that I've worked on, and I broke them down on how I would analyze the target audience and how I would build features to drive metrics. So my advice to you would be to do exactly that. If you want to be a product manager, I want you to take a certain game, take your favorite game, one that you have really deep knowledge within, and try to understand, if you were to build a new feature, how would you engage that target audience?
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
I think Natalie had something to chime in as well.
Yes, because I have an answer to both of your questions.
Sure.
For once, I was originally a programming student, and I stopped that during the pandemic because I was just deeply unhappy with how studying was going. Mm-hmm. But I also know that I'm part of the hiring process at our company, and we hire not based on experience, but on talent and values. Mm-hmm. So as long as you can show people that you care and that you tried, and even if you failed, if you're being honest about that, I can actually help. Mm-hmm. There's a reason I shared my diagnosis with you, not because I'm actually it didn't change things. If anything, it made me stronger. Gotcha. And the same thing with the resume thing, like I put my Twitch streaming on there. I'm pretty sure you put a hobby, like you have a hobby that you did bring you through COVID, something that made you stronger in a way, even if you don't notice it. So if you can analyze it and put that on your resume somehow, it shows that you've done things, even if they're not studying. If you DM for Dungeons and Dragons, awesome, you can write stories.
Straight.
There is ways to phrase it in a nice way.
Thank you so much.
All right, right side.
Yeah, so I am a current sophomore at the College of Charleston, so I'm looking towards internships starting very soon. I've got backgrounds in programming, but I want to do narrative design. Is there any like special sauce for internships, or is it just email companies and ask, do you have any? Because I know internship season is much more starting in the fall.
Yeah, so the question is, as a sophomore, I'm looking for internship. Like, how does that differ than looking for a full-time position? Adinda has something.
Yeah, maybe I can answer this. Like, for example, I see on LinkedIn, if I follow companies that, for companies, they search for internships. So literally, if you follow those companies, you will always receive their internship calls at the right time, even faster than if they put it like online. So sometimes they're already full very fast. So I would really advise to, find people, connect with people with the company that you really like. Make friends online, and that's my advice with this.
Yeah, I think the other thing possibly you can do is just look at, like, it may be too late in this cycle, but if you look at like when were the job applications out for the companies or roles that you're interested in, and you can start preparing for the next cycle. I think typically smaller companies may still have openings right now, but the big companies have all kind of done stuff by now. All right, left side.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sam. I'm a recent graduate. And I was wondering, most of what I do is narrative design. I write a lot, and I've always had trouble like presenting that in a way on my portfolio that looks engaging, because it's a lot of writing stuff. It's just a big block of text. It's hard to like get a screenshot of that looks interesting. I was wondering if you had any tips.
I mean, I'm not a narrative programming. I mean, I'm more of a programmer, but I would suggest, like, if you can get something like Twine, where you can take your narrative and make it an interactive experience. So it's not just, I mean, I think having your script or your written document is useful, but if you're going for games, if you can show that you can take your narrative skills and take something like Twine, which doesn't require much technical knowledge to be able to set up, I think that would really help your narrative portfolio.
Thank you.
Right side.
Hi, I'm a student who has skills in audio and music composition, and I'm about to build my portfolio, but how should I have a narrative that holds people's attention when all I really have is disconnected, sound-free personal projects and also music separate from that? So I guess the question is, how do I hold people's attention as someone with skills in audio when I don't have that much visual stuff?
Right. So the question is, what should I do for a sound design / music portfolio? I mean, I think I would imagine in that case, like, they're not expecting fancy visuals and videos of it. But I mean, if you have a video of your audio or sounds being used in a game project, I think that would help. You could have samples of your music on SoundCloud or whatever platforms you use. So I think it's going to be a little bit different than the examples I showed, for sure. But again, I would suggest, regardless of your discipline, go on Google, search for, sound composers or sound designers in games. What do their portfolios look like? And that should give you some ideas to brainstorm off of.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for being here.
Left side.
Hello. So I graduated last May, and I've been applying to jobs ever since then, over 100 easily, and I've only ever gotten one interview. I have overhauled my resume and portfolio about 4 times each now, almost 5, is from all the advice I've gotten here. And the one interview I had, I actually made it to the design test. I didn't get past that. So I feel like I have the interview process down pretty well, but my problem is just landing one in the first place. And considering how many times I've updated my resume and portfolio, I don't know what's wrong. I'm making more stuff to add to my portfolio and resume.
All right. So the question is, what do you do if you put out lots of applications but barely hear back from anything? Actually, Lynette, I'm curious. So of the 32 interviews, like, were there a lot more applications from that, or how like what percent of
I
your?
was giving out on average I was applying to about 25 companies a day.
Okay.
I really needed a job because I was an immigrant and I needed to stay in the country. So when I say it's a numbers game, it's the best cliche there is. It's a numbers game.
Okay.
The number of people that responded to me was very less. The number of people that I could communicate with was even less. So I accelerated my interview process. So don't give up. If you've already updated as much as you can, it is a numbers game. It definitely was at least 25 a day because I needed a job.
Then I should probably.
So if you're doing everything you can, don't be afraid to also ask for even if you are talking to HR, don't be afraid to just be like, okay, if they say, hey, we're not looking, just say, hey, I would like to apply in the future. Can you tell me what I can do to improve myself? Just ask them for that. A little bit of feedback. It always helps.
All right. Thank you very much.
I think Dennis has something to add. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I have more to add to that. My method works if you have the time. If you don't need a job right now, my method works like overtime. So you definitely want to like target the companies that you want to work for. Like, please limit it. 100 is a lot, but it's like swiping right on Tinder and you're looking for the most desperate person. Yeah. So I want you to limit your companies to 5 to 7 companies. I want you to research the roles in those companies that you want and the people who work in those roles. I want you to cold email them, and I can send you a template later. I want you to cold email them and ask them about what it's like to work in that role and if they could possibly look at your portfolio. And I want you to prepare yourself for those roles. But when I was doing my interviews, I was also applying like 5 to 7 at a time. And out of those 5 to 7, I would typically get 2, which is like, I don't know what percent that is. Someone can do the math on that. But every single time I would just do 5 to 7 at a time because of that methodical approach is so labor intensive. But in my experience and to the friends that I've given this advice to, they tend to get more hits when they have a more targeted approach. So I want you to tailor your entire approach to the specific companies that you are interested in because your passion will show.
Okay.
Lucas, I think just a quick note.
Yeah, just quickly, my situation was very unique because I had a recruiter on LinkedIn actually reach out to me to apply for my position. And the way I went about doing that is I added every person on LinkedIn that was in the industry I could find, essentially, because you have to think of it as your LinkedIn is you advertising yourself. And the only way people are going to see that is if people see your profile. So the more people you can add, the better. But definitely to Dennis's point, you want to tailor it to exactly what you want.
Yeah, I think the one thing, having been on the hiring end of reviewing applications, you can tell when an application is just a shotgun application that they're sending to lots and lots of places and it's the same generic cover letter. So I think if you can spend more time on specific, what positions are you really excited about and interested in, that would help.
I will say that is one struggle I have is I am a systems designer that plays almost every single genre of game. Therefore, I love thinking about almost every single mechanic there possibly is. And
yeah,
I don't know what to choose.
So yeah, I think that's something maybe to think about more, maybe use the Ikigai method.
All right.
Let's go on to the
Thank you.
next question on the right.
When I'm creating my programming portfolio, how do I find a balance between not enough information and too much to read?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the last part. Not enough. So I'm a programmer, portfolio. How do I find the balance between not enough information and
too much to read?
Too much to read. So I think what I would suggest is that for a programmer portfolio, you really focus on showing me what are the coolest things that you've done. Don't give me your entire source code for your whole game. Show me the 2 or 3 really cool coding things in. We can talk maybe a little bit more I can give you some more personalized advice maybe in the after session thing. Because it's really going to depend on what type of programmer role you're kind of interested in. But I think it's definitely possible to find that balance for sure.
Okay.
Let's go on the left side.
All right. Hi there. I graduated from RPI and I'm looking for jobs in narrative design. And I think one of the things that I have found difficulty in actually is the tailoring process with how time intensive it is. And I've been trying more to, actually, just mass apply for things. But, I keep hearing that that's not as effective and it seems to go back and forth for me. So with respect to targeting companies, I'm wondering how exactly you're kind of supposed to balance, your focus on and like nail down and ensure that you can, I guess, get what you're looking for if A, you don't think the company hires, the kind of person you are, B, you have like limited time to apply for each, kind of role that's posted if there is one, and C, if like you are missing some crucial piece of your application that you need to get even to the interview. I know that's kind of a loaded question. If you can't like wait so long or don't have the time to like keep going back to those companies, because you could be applying for years if you tailor like extensively.
So can I summarize it real quick? Because we got trying to get a couple more questions. But
I'm sorry.
So the question is basically, how do you find the balance between like tailoring it per specific application, spending a lot of time on it, and the balance between that and mass applying for lots of stuff? Because they're kind of two competing forces. I don't know, like Linda or Lynette or
Sanjay, actually, like going back to what Luke just said earlier, that sometimes the connection you have to people can matter even more than what you're applying for and how you're applying for. So if that's what you struggle with, and you realize you have some people skills and like can just go to places like this and talk to people, get those business cards in. At least in our company, we always like add an extra for, we met this person in person. Like that can help you and that can give you an up, and you are a GDC, so this is the best place to try it. If you just get yourself out there like physically and connect with people, that can mean just as much as like tailoring it a little bit more.
I see.
All right, right side.
Yeah, student in college, still in the middle of it. But I'm looking and curious about what kind of roles like even exist in the industry for me to pursue after I graduate. I don't really know what kind of specific directions, what to even like tailor my resume for. I'm not even at that stage yet, but I want to start thinking about it. Do you guys have any specific places, any advice on learning, figuring out, getting information on what kind of like roles, especially I'm not really a programmer or artist. So outside of those kind of roles, any places to look?
All right. So the question is like, I'm still kind of in college and I'm not sure exactly what roles I'm going to do, but I know I don't want to do programming and art probably. So I think Luke has
Yeah, so the role I have now, I've worked a lot in live ops, and I didn't know what that was when I was in school. So there's a lot of roles that are kind of like coming to the surface that might not have even existed a while ago, because things like live service games just didn't really exist back in the day, but now that's a huge part of our industry. So it's something you really have to keep your ear to the ground of, constantly looking to see what are the current trends, what are new things.
Where would you suggest looking to?
Where
do I keep my ear to the
ground? So honestly, like any discords, I kind of have, as Adinda was saying, is like game developer discords, as well as GDC talks, crazy. Like you can go through the vault and then through the public YouTube, like find, I don't know what this role is that this person's talking about. Watch that. Maybe you'll be interested. Keep your mind open.
All right.
I have some to add to that.
Well, you only got like 1 minute, so let me just do one last question. But we can talk more. We'll talk more outside as well. Let's see the question on the left. Last question.
So I have a question. So earlier in the presentation, the Ikigai document template was mentioned, but I don't see any QR code for it.
Yeah. Maybe we can just give it to you after. We'll give it to you outside right now. For the question was, where's the Ikigai method worksheet? But yeah. Dennis will have the link. He can give it to you afterwards. I think we're probably out of time now. So if you have more questions, we will be in right across the way in the speaker area. So wrap up area. Thanks.